Chapter 266, Raza's Helplessness. Raza studied the two reports as he calculated 24 different blood samples. The group had 25 different people, meaning that except one, everyone got injured. But who stayed uninjured? After calculating more, Raza concluded, it isn't someone from my umbu. Since they didn't contact me again, it is safe that all 12 of them were killed. This implies that the mercenaries had someone very strong hidden in their ranks who could eliminate all 12 umbu without allowing anyone to escape. His eyes fell on the second report as he analyzed further. That person could very well be this Hiroshi fellow. Either he was with the mercenaries and lured the umbu into a trap, or the more fearsome scenario, that guy killed all umbu and mercenaries by himself. But, how strong would he need to be to kill 24 ninjas who were at least at the Chunin level by himself? Raza shook his head and corrected his line of thinking. No, he could have caught them off guard by using his disguise. However, even in that case, this person needs to be at the elite Jounin level. The 11 traders who came along with him were nowhere to be found. Though Baki hasn't completed his search yet, it should be a hopeless search. Because, if this Hiroshi is at the elite Jounin level, then the remaining traders could have been his clones. No, his shadow clones. Probably the assassins were his clones as well. The person who attacked Sabakitsu should be him as well. Raza's expression became very ugly as he muttered, Konoha sent an elite Jounin to create a mess in my country so brazenly. They want to increase our dependence on them so that we are forced to stay in an alliance with them. Just like Fujin, Raza could see the impact of destroying just one of the two provision depots in the west. The scenario was just too favorable to Konoha. Unfortunately, he had no proof to give to the daimyo or the public. However, despite the absence of any proof, he was certain that Konoha was behind it. Within a day, he sent messages to every noble in the west who supported him. In addition, he dispatched another 200 ninjas to the western parts of the country. Fujin had no idea that he would soon be hunted all across the vast deserts. However, the reinforcements were very far away. Traveling across the desert needed 3 days. During this time, Fujin had eliminated another noble who supported Raza completely. Raza's mood worsened even further after receiving the news. In a rage, he shouted, "Does Konoha want to go to war?" He looked at his assistant and commanded, "Call every council member in the village for an emergency meeting." The assistant nodded and got to work. Within half an hour, most of the council members arrived. Raza informed them about the situation and his calculations. Every council member agreed with his calculations. Raza stated, "Konoha seems to be hell-bent on making life difficult for us. We have to retaliate." However, his words caused a wave of silence to spread through the room. After half a minute of silence, one council member commented, "We have no way to retaliate. Since the Uchiha massacre, Konoha has increased their defenses multiple times. The number of their ninjas moving in the Land of Fire has increased multiple times. We will have to send either elite Jounin or a squad of Jounins to be able to achieve something significant. And once they succeed, Konoha will hunt them until they are killed. In addition, they have the Yamanaka clan. Not only will our ninjas be killed, but their memories will also be read. And if Konoha uses that information to convince the Wind Daimyo, then our budget will be restricted even further." The other council members agreed with him. Raza also frowned. He had a very low number of elite Jounins. He didn't want to send them to their deaths. In addition, their deaths would hurt Suna in multiple ways. Silence spread through the room. The only eligible name they could think of who wasn't already exceeding 50 years in age was Baki. But Baki was helpless in dealing with the situation in the Wind capital. If he messed up after entering the Land of Fire, they would lose one of their strongest fighters. None of them wanted to risk this. Finally, one of the council members suggested, in my opinion, we should focus on killing the elite Jounin that has infiltrated our country. If we kill him, Konoha will feel heartache at losing him. After all, the value of an elite Jounin exceeds more than 100 Chunins. Especially considering that he is a very good user of wind jutsus. No country needs wind affinity ninjas more than Konoha. Everyone immediately agreed with him. The meeting ended without deciding on any good plan to hurt Konoha. Raza sighed in disappointment as he too couldn't think of any good method to retaliate. He just hatefully looked in the west. Around the same time, Konoha received intel about the recent happenings in the Land of Wind. Hiruzen read the reports with a weird expression and called Shikaku. Shikaku received the scroll from Hiruzen. His expression also became weird. Hiruzen chuckled and said, "You messed up. You should have defined the mission parameters properly." Shikaku sighed and muttered, 10 nobles, 12 family members of nobles, 4 ninjas, and 1 food storage depot. Does he intend to start a war? He let out another sigh and said softly, "What a drag. I told him that it is the promotion mission for Umbu Captain. Why is he acting like he wants to become the Umbu commander?" Hiruzen let out another chuckle. Shikaku looked at him and said, "This isn't a laughing matter. He has acted so many times that Suna will definitely suspect us. Even if he didn't leave any evidence, they will still want to retaliate." Hiruzen nodded and said, "Fortify our defenses. Set up traps for any enemy squads who would want to create a mess in our country. In addition, prepare yourself for more such news." After all, he has just reached the western side of the Land of Wind. Hiruzen wasn't worried about Suna's retaliation. Instead, he wanted to use the opportunity to kill their elite troops. As long as Suna's strength was kept in check, they wouldn't try to break the alliance openly. Shikaku sighed and said, "We also need to know what deal Raza and Wind Daimyo reached. This wasn't what we wanted. If they resolved their differences, then all our efforts would be pointless." ALS. He suddenly stopped speaking and looked at Hiruzen and asked, "Why do I have to do it?" Hiruzen had asked him to do a very tedious task in such a smooth manner that he didn't even consider refusing it. However, he had no will to spend a lot of time working on it. Hiruzen replied, "Because you were the one who messed up." Shikaku retorted, "You were in the room as well." Hiruzen nodded and said, "But you were the one to pass the orders." Both entered into a staring contest. After a minute, Shikaku sighed and got to work. As soon as the door closed, Hiruzen chuckled once again. He looked at the reports once again and thought, "I should have expected this. But it's all right." Suna was becoming too arrogant. If they aren't reined in, they will soon become more chaotic and break off the alliance. Once that happens, the Fourth Great Ninja War will just be a matter of time. Hiruzen got up and looked out of his window at the stone faces. He let out a sigh as he thought, "Finally, our strength has recovered. Once I officially promote the current crop of ninjas to Jounin rank, our numbers will have reached sufficient levels officially. However, we still need a few years of peace for this generation of ninjas to fully mature. Then we can afford to enter another war." As he looked at the stone faces, tiredness could be seen on his face. However, suddenly he squinted his eyes and chakra gathered in them. He noticed someone sneakily moving on the Hokage monuments. But, soon he let out a long sigh and muttered, "I am getting too old for this shit. I should have dumped this kid on his perverted godfather." The entire village suddenly noticed that the Hokage monuments were painted and made to look hilarious. Soon, Iruka noticed it as well and began chasing after Naruto. While Konoha was peaceful and joyous, the situation in the western territories of the Land of Wind was heating up. 148 Tsunagakure ninjas arrived in the city of Sabakitsu. Manabu, Yura, and 2 more ninjas met up with Hitachi, who told them every detail regarding their short clash with Fujin. Manabu analyzed and said, Kazekage-sama's analysis seems to be on point. This is most likely the same guy. Odaka added, an elite jounin from Konoha. We have to catch him and give him the most painful death imaginable. But he scratched his chin and asked, how do we find him in these vast deserts? Yuro looked at Odaka and replied, he seems to be targeting the nobles that favor our village. We just have to study his movements and discover his next target. Then we can set up an ambush for him. Odaka looked at Yura carefully. Odaka was one of the few elite jounins in Suna and a council member as well. He was quite senior as well. Along with Manabu, he was one of the 2 leaders of the Suna ninjas that arrived in Sabakitsu. He said, good. You are good, Yura. It's good to see promising ninjas in the next generation. The last member of their group was an Umbu captain who was assigned as the leader of the 20 Umbu ninjas. He was wearing an eagle mask. He said, let's lay down a map and analyze his movements. We also need to analyze his abilities. Then we can set a trap. The group nodded and entered Hitachi's office. Chapter 267, A Devious Trap. After entering his office, Hitachi laid down a map on a table. All 5 ninjas stood around it. Odaka asked, Eagle, what do you recommend? Eagle took a marker and circled Sabakitsu and a nearby town and said, he first burned a provision depot in Sabakitsu and then killed a noble in this town. The nearest town from there is Korenchi. But that town doesn't have any noble. So according to my estimations, his target could either be the city of Shunkyuto or the town of Kiganjima. But it is difficult to say which one. Manabu and Odaka began analyzing. After a couple of minutes, Manabu sighed and said, it's impossible to say which one he will target. We will split up and guard both cities. Yura and I will go to Shunkyuto while Odaka and Eagle will go to Kiganjima. Hitachi, you stay in this city and ensure that the last provision depot stays safe. We will leave 20 additional ninjas with you. The remaining will be divided equally among us. Odama, Hitachi, and Eagle nodded. They agreed with Manabu's plan. They quickly began discussing which ninja squads would join their groups. Suddenly, Manabu noticed something amiss and looked at Yura. Yura was still staring at the map and didn't say a word. Manabu asked, is something the matter, Yura? Yura snapped out of his thoughts. He said, I have a different take on this, Elder Manabu. Manabu said, explain. Yura said, if we split up, our chances of killing him will decrease. And, if we move to those cities, then he might notice our movements and avoid hitting them altogether. In that case, our deployment will be a waste and he might annoy us further by randomly targeting other nobles, forcing us to split into smaller groups. In addition, he should already have a good lead on us. If he kills that noble before we even reach, then we won't be able to do anything and might get exposed for nothing. His words made others frown. They had considered these points but not in this detail as they didn't see any other option. Manabu asked, what do you suggest? Yura said, let's abandon these 2 nobles. The eyes of the 4 ninjas widened at how casually Yura asked to sacrifice the 2 nobles. Yura pointed at a city on the map and said, After he kills the nobles in Shunkyuto and Kiganjima, he will target the noble living in Mizunashi City. While he is busy killing those two nobles, we can move around this territory and set up a giant trap in Mizunashi before he reaches there. We will hide inside and around the city using Fuinjutsu. When he attacks, we can all surround and kill him. Yura's plan surprised them. They thought about his words and agreed more and more with him. Though two nobles would die, the sacrifice would be worth it if they killed him. It was an exchange they were more than willing to make. Odaka looked at Yura in a new light. He thought, I was just teasing him earlier for pointing out the obvious. But, he is indeed good. This level of talent should be in the council. Manabu said, that is a good plan. Much better than mine for sure. Hitachi added, good plan, but there is one flaw. The ninjas deployed at the city gates didn't notice any anomalies or anything strange. So I speculate that he entered the city without alerting the seals inscribed here. Yura replied, I considered that. But this city is very big and was guarded by just 4 ninjas at the entrances. So he would have had opportunities to study the seals. But in Mizunashi, he will be able to sense us only if he is a sensor and activates his chakra field. However, doing so while attempting assassination will be very stupid. So he won't do it. Yura's explanation made sense. Everyone agreed. He added, in addition, the time would allow for the backup sent by Kazekage-sama to arrive. So we can even set up a perimeter in the desert to stop him in case he somehow manages to escape. Either way, the battlefield will unfold as we want. Manabu said, yes. Hunting him will begin easier if backup arrives before we set a trap for him. I'll communicate with them. You guys finalize the plans. Manabu quickly left. The rest quickly finalized the details of their trap. In the end, they decided to leave 30 ninjas in the city. They will not only aid in the defense of the provision depot but would also be responsible for ensuring that the fact that so many ninjas arrived in Sabakitsu doesn't get leaked outside the city. Within an hour, 118 ninjas led by Manabu and Odaka left the city of Sabakitsu. They moved around the town of Kiganjima and moved towards the city of Mizunashi. As Yura calculated, Fujin had made his move. Just after they left Sabakitsu, Fujin killed the noble in Kiganjima and quickly began moving towards Shunkyuto. As he moved, Fujin analyzed, as expected, the nobles are being heavily protected. But, there wasn't any Jounin-level ninja protecting him. I guess Raza wasn't able to send reinforcements so quickly. Or perhaps, the other Umbu who are supposed to be on a promotion mission are also making a mess and forcing Raza to deploy his ninjas everywhere. I can't be sure which one is the case, but it is better to assume the first one. My next target will probably be the last one without any significant protection. Within a few hours, he arrived outside Shunkyuto. His eyes glowed as he observed the walls of the city. He muttered, this one has no seals to protect it either. I am disappointed at how lazy Tsunagakure has been. Granted these cities are far in the west, but is it really so much work to just ask a Fuinjutsu Grandmaster to visit all these cities and bless the city by carving a few seals? With no seals to block his path, Fujin just entered the city normally while maintaining a disguise. He casually walked into the city while moving towards Noble's mansion. After a few minutes, he arrived outside the mansion. He hid in a corner where no one would see him and muttered, all these nobles live right at the center of the city. I don't even have to make any effort to find them. Fujin sighed. His mission had been progressing too smoothly. He was itching for a good fight. Of course, he wouldn't seek it if his enemies didn't act smart enough and allowed him to do his job without any resistance. His eyes glowed as he observed the mansion. He analyzed, 8 ninjas. 2 at Chunin level and 6 at Genin. Raza is awfully slow. Are they planning to lower my guard by giving me easy kills? He made a hand sign. Earth release, Earth military movement jutsu. Fujin disappeared into the ground and entered the mansion. None of the 8 ninjas were sensors and Fujin was suppressing and hiding his chakra. So no one detected him. Fujin moved directly towards the central room where Fujin had detected 3 people. 2 of them were ninjas while the third one was a civilian. This was the room where the noble was hiding. He was sitting in a chair while the 2 ninjas stood next to him. He nervously asked the ninjas standing next to him, "Lord Kazuo, how long do we have to keep hiding here?" Kazuo was the Chunin in charge of the defense of this remote city. He replied respectfully, "Don't worry, Lord Toshio. Reinforcements from our village will arrive soon." Toshio was still very worried. Kazuo assured him, "We are here with you as well, Lord Toshio. Live or die, we will join you. So don't worry." The noble nodded. For some reason, he looked to be very fearful of Kazuo. Suddenly, all 3 of them looked ahead. A head popped out of the ground. In the blink of an eye, an entire person appeared. Toshio was horrified. Kazuo and the other ninja also had solemn expressions. However, both had determined expressions. They seemed to have accepted their fate. They quickly grabbed their kunao and took a fighting stance. Kazuo asked, "Who are you?" Fujin didn't bother replying and shot an air bullet at Toshio. The Suna ninjas couldn't even react when the bullet hit Toshio's chest. Toshio's eyes widened. Time slowed down as he felt the pain in his chest. He knew that the Suna ninjas wouldn't be a match for the intruder, but he didn't expect to be killed so quickly. However, instead of sorrow or horror, a gentle smile appeared on his face as he looked at Fujin. His smile surprised Fujin. It was the first time he had seen a noble accept death with a smile on his face. Toshio thought, "My time has come. But my family will live a life of comfort and luxury." He closed his eyes and accepted his death with a gentle smile on his face. Chapter 268, The Spirit of Sacrifice. Fujin was stunned by the smile on Toshio's face. Despite being the killer, he noticed no hatred in Toshio's eyes for him. There was just relief alongside some reluctance. Thoughts clashed at the speed of light in Fujin's brain trying to make sense of this bizarre scenario. He muttered to himself, "What the hell?" Kazuo and his subordinate noticed Fujin's momentary lapse of concentration. Both immediately jumped at Fujin to kill him. However, Fujin was well aware of his surroundings. He stepped to his left and got out of the genin's range. He caught Kazuo's arm and kicked him in the abdomen and sent him flying into the wall. He crashed into the wall and fell on the ground and began vomiting blood. The genin landed and moved towards Fujin again. However, all he saw was a fist coming straight at him. Fujin's chakra-enhanced fist landed on his face and blew it off his head. Kazuo gathered himself and was about to get up when a kick landed on his side and sent him rolling on the floor while vomiting more blood. Numerous ribs had cracked. Fujin didn't attack anymore and asked in a plain voice, "Who was that man?" Kazuo finally managed to get on his knees. He looked at Fujin hatefully and shouted angrily, "You killed the kind noble Toshio. A demon like you will rot in hell." Fujin snorted, "Save your lies for yourself. I have killed way too many nobles to not identify one." "Who was he?" Kazuo's eyes widened. However, he immediately put on an angry face and cursed, "First you kill our noble and then talk bullshit. Just kill me and be done with it." I will wait for you in the deepest layers of hell. Fujin didn't attack him and said, good play. I feel stupid for not considering such a simple trick. You knew I was going to come here. So you hid the real noble and used a body double. Cool trick. Kazuo's eyes widened once again. Thoughts ran through his mind trying to find the optimal reply. He wanted to convince Fujin that he killed the real noble. However, he realized that he wouldn't be able to do so. The more he lied, the more Fujin would be convinced. A grin broke on Kazuo's face. He spoke loudly with pride, that's right. How does it feel to be tricked by the oldest trick in the book? Ha 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 ha. Fujin didn't mind his taunt. He wasn't petty enough to not give credit where credit was due. It was a fact that he was fooled. If the body double hadn't smiled kindly and behaved like any normal human being, he would have been fooled successfully. He replied plainly, unfortunately, your plan has failed. Kazuo replied with that huge grin still plastered on his face, it hasn't. Even if you realized the plan, there isn't anything you can do. You don't know where the noble is hiding. No one other than me does. And I will never say it. You want to kill the noble? Then you will have to kill every single person in the city. No, you will also have to scout the entire desert to check if he has been hidden outside the city. And you will also have to kill everyone in every village in the vicinity of the city. Tell me, did your motherfucking masters from Konoha permit you to commit such atrocities? Ha ha ha. He continued laughing loudly continuously. Fujin chuckled, you think I'm from Konoha? Good. How about we make a deal? I will let you and your friends live. In exchange, you will tell me the location of the noble. You can even tell Raza that the killer is from Konoha. Fujin's words stopped Kazuo's laughter. He became confused and wondered, is he not from Konoha? Wouldn't that mean that someone else is trying to start a war between Konoha and Suna? No. I shouldn't doubt Raza's intelligence. He might be saying this just to confuse me. He began laughing and said, no. You can torture me however you want. I still won't tell you. He thought, if I can delay him here until the reinforcements arrive, then I can drag him to hell with me. Fujin's eyes turned towards the door of the room. He sensed multiple ninjas running towards the room. The fighting earlier generated some noise that attracted them. A couple of shadow clones popped next to him and leapt to confront those ninjas. Fujin said, unfortunately, torturing isn't my forte. Killing is. Don't worry, I'll let you die knowing what will happen in the future. After I kill you, I will torture the noble's family in public. That should make him crawl out of his hiding spot. Kazuo continued laughing and said, do it. Fujin noticed how unaffected he was and concluded, as I expected. They are fakes as well. Fujin had no clue who the noble was or how he looked. He entertained Kazuo for so long just to get whatever information he could. Now he had received most of the information he needed. He raised two fingers. Wind began flowing around him. Kazuo's eyes widened as he realized, Wind sword jutsu. I guess this is it for me. Sucks that he never came close to me. I hoped he got overconfident and got closer to torture me or beat me up. He closed his eyes and made the confrontation hand seal. Immediately, multiple tags on his body lit up. He looked at Fujin with a crazed look in his eyes and shouted, I will drag you to hell. However, Fujin was unmoved. Blades of wind shot out from around his fingers and hit every single explosive tag stuck to Kazuo's body. Every single explosive tag was destroyed before it could explode. The wind blades also left multiple deep cuts on Kazuo. Kazuo was stunned. Even if he couldn't kill Fujin, he expected to at least injure him. However, he never expected such a result. Fujin said, "I respect your intelligence and bravery. I'd have allowed you to die in the way you want, but I need this mansion." Kazuo's eyes widened as he saw Fujin transform into him. Fujin said, "Rest in peace." A wind blade sliced Kazuo's throat. However, his eyes were glued to Fujin. As his brain slowly stopped working, numerous questions arose in his mind. How did he know I would explode? Why does he keep speaking in such a plain monotonous tone? Why didn't he get angry no matter how much I taunted him? And why does his face show no emotions at all? Unfortunately, he wouldn't get any answers. He closed his eyes and died without knowing the name or the real face of his killer. Fujin looked at him and sighed, a shame that his strength was so weak. Had he been stronger, his name might have been famous throughout the ninja world. Fujin concentrated on his chakra. 8 shadow clones appeared. One shadow clone took the disguise of the genin he killed while one dispelled itself. The 2 shadow clones Fujin had created earlier received the memories and dispelled themselves. Fujin and his clones received their memories. 4 shadow clones transformed into the 4 ninjas that the clones killed. While the last 2 clones dived into the ground and moved towards the basement. The last 2 Suna ninjas were hiding there to protect the fake family of the noble. Fujin looked at the person who was disguised as the noble and wondered, why did he smile in such a way? What sort of life would one have to experience to smile at his killer without any hate? Fujin analyzed for a bit but couldn't come up with a definite answer. After all, he had no idea who the man was and what his life story was. Fujin extended his hand towards his head. Yin chakra poured out of his hand and entered the dead man's brain. The yin chakra gently began following through his neurons. Fujin kept at it for 3 minutes before the dead man's brain started to break down. Fujin frowned and muttered to himself, I thought that the desire to truly know the memories could be a factor in reading memories. I guess not. Fujin sighed and gave up. He was very interested in knowing his backstory but had no means to know it. He stored the dead body. 2 days ago. The news of the destruction of one provision depot had spread throughout Shunkyuto. The people were very worried. Meanwhile, Toshio was concerned for his life. He thought, if this is done by the same organization that killed nobles and their families in Wind Capital, then I could be on their hit list. No, my family is in danger as well. He immediately began thinking of a plan to ensure his survival but couldn't come up with any plan. Meanwhile, Kazuo received a message from Tsunagakure. He read the scroll and sighed thinking, Raza has lost a lot of influence due to these recent murders. Whoever is doing this must be crazy strong. He doesn't even care about our lives and just wants the noble to stay safe. Kazuo's impression of Raza degraded a lot. However, as a loyal ninja, he was willing to sacrifice his life for his country. He wondered, but how do I keep Toshio safe? He thought for a long time before coming up with a decent plan. He walked towards Toshio's office while sighing, with this method, this old fellow will live. But I will survive only if I am extremely lucky. This really sucks. Chapter 269, When the World is Against You. Kazuo entered Toshio's office and said loudly, Everyone, leave. I need to talk with Toshio-sama alone. All the servants immediately left. Toshio was stressed thinking about ways to live. He looked at Kazuo with a hopeful look on his face while thinking, maybe he can think of something. As soon as everyone left and the doors were locked, Toshio said, "It's good you came, Kazuo. I was about to find you as well. I have never been so stressed in my life." Kazuo nodded and asked, "Worried about the assassination?" Toshio nodded. Kazuo replied, "You don't need to be worried. Lord Kazekage has asked me to ensure that you and your family stay safe." A look of relief appeared on Toshio's face. He asked, "Did you think of a way?" Kazuo nodded and replied, "Yes. Listen carefully. You and your family will move out of the mansion. All four of you will stay under disguise by using makeup, wearing ordinary clothes and moving to live in an ordinary house in the city. You won't have any servants or guards. No one other than me will be aware of your location. In the meantime, decoys will have to be arranged to replace you and your family. If the assassin attacks, that decoy will die. As long as the decoy doesn't blow up your cover, you will get to live and the assassin will go away. If your cover is blown, then you will have to stay hidden for a long time until that assassin gives up. I'll probably not be alive by then, so your survival will entirely depend on you." Toshio became excited after hearing the plan. However, he hid his excitement and put up a sad face and asked, "Do you have to risk your life?" Kazuo easily saw through the fake concern and said, "It's the life of a ninja. Stop wasting time and prepare to move out and arrange for decoys. I am not sure how much time we have." Toshio replied, "I already have decoys in mind. I'll arrange them for my family. However, I need your help to bring the one for me here. His name is Tetsuo." Toshio gave him the address of Tetsuo and explained his circumstances to Kazuo. Kazuo nodded and left. Toshio immediately got to work. He made 3 people disguise themselves as his wife and sons and asked them to stay in the basement. They knew the consequences of disobeying him and agreed. At the same time, Kazuo reached the outskirts of the city. He searched for a bit and saw an old house. Outside, a middle-aged man was sitting. He looked very tired and sick. Kazuo approached him and asked, "Are you Tetsuo?" Tetsuo was surprised. He looked at Kazuo and immediately recognized him. His eyes widened as he got up in a hurry and bowed down, "Lord Kazuo. It's an honor that you know my name." Kazuo nodded and said, "Come with me, Toshio-sama has instructions for you." Without waiting for his approval, Kazuo turned around and began walking. Tetsuo immediately followed. However, he was confused and wondered, what would Lord Kazuo and Lord Toshio want from someone like me? Tetsuo's current state was horrible. His body was weak and he would frequently fall ill. Due to this, he couldn't work continuously and most of what he earned would be spent in the hospital. So his family's financial condition was very poor. And he was in a lot of debt. He wanted a good life for his family, but no matter how much he tried, it seemed like the entire world was against him. They walked into the mansion. Tetsuo received a lot of curious gazes, making him feel uncomfortable. He did his best to ignore them. He followed Kazuo into Toshio's office and immediately paid respects to Toshio. Toshio put up a kind smile and said, "Get up." Tetsuo got up and asked, "I wonder why you called me here, Lord." Toshio got up and walked past Tetsuo. He looked through the window and asked, "Are you aware of the recent wave of assassinations, Tetsuo?" Tetsuo nodded. Toshio sighed and said, "I am afraid that I too will be targeted by him. I called you here as I have an important job for you." He turned around and looked into Tetsuo's eyes and said, "I am willing to die. However, if I die, then our whole city will suffer. My children aren't capable enough to run a city yet. So I want you to disguise as me and take my place in the mansion. His words shocked Tetsuo. Tetsuo involuntarily stepped back. But he crashed into Kazuo and fell to the ground. He looked at Kazuo, who was staring straight into his eyes. Tetsuo became frightened as he felt that if he said no, Kazuo would kill him. He immediately looked at Toshio and said, "Lord, I have a wife and 2 young children. Without me, they will become fatherless and no one will be able to look after them or feed them. I would have loved to sacrifice myself for our city, but I just can't leave my family alone." Kazuo frowned. If Tetsuo was reluctant, then he wouldn't work as a decoy. Toshio looked at Kazuo and said, "It's fine, Kazuo. Not everyone can give their lives for the city." He painted Kazuo as the bad guy in Tetsuo's mind while showing himself to be a very just ruler. He looked back at Tetsuo and said, "Tetsuo, I am aware of your family conditions as well as your medical health. If you say no, I won't force you, but hear me out first." Tetsuo nodded. Toshio said, "If you take my place, Kazuo and the other ninjas will be responsible for your safety. You won't die until they are alive. Irrespective of whether we get attacked or not, as long as you live, I'll reward you abundantly. I will clear all your debt, give you a stable job in the mansion and get the best doctors for you to improve your health." He let out a sigh and said, "But if our luck is bad and you die, I will take care of your family. I will clear their debt and give them so much money that even your next 9 generations won't be able to spend it." Hearing the offer, Tetsuo went silent. He was well aware that he wasn't capable of providing for his family. But he loved his family and didn't want to leave them. He fell into deep thought. Toshio and Kazuo didn't disturb him. After 20 minutes of struggling, Tetsuo let out a sigh and thought, "Even if they protect me, I doubt they could stop the assassin. But irrespective of whether I live or not, my family will be taken care of. Though they will be sad about losing me, their sadness will fade away with time. And they will live a fulfilling life. Besides, my death isn't fixed. If my luck changes for once, I will live and my family will not need to worry about money." He got up. Kazuo looked into his eyes and was surprised. He thought, "What determination." At the same time, he looked at Toshio and thought, "This guy might be a scum, but he understands the human heart very well." In order to ensure that his family lived a good life, Tetsuo was determined to risk his life. No matter what, he wouldn't fail this mission. Tetsuo said, "Lord, I am willing to be your decoy." Toshio nodded and said, "Shunkyuto City will remember your bravery. Kazuo will instruct you further." Kazuo nodded and left the room with Tetsuo. As soon as they left, a cruel smile appeared on Toshio's face. He thought, "It's hilarious how gullible these fools are. Take care of his family. He. If he lives, I'll kill him so that no one will know that I hid in the face of danger. If he dies, then I'll burn his body and never tell anyone that he died. His family will think that he just abandoned them. As for what happens to them, how is that my concern?" Unfortunately for Tetsuo, even in his final moments, the world still stood against him. He died without being able to provide his family with what he desired. Present. Fujin put his thoughts about the man behind him and sighed, "What a mess. Just when I thought that the mission was too easy, its difficulty rises to an insane level." Despite complaining, a smile could be seen on his face. He enjoyed fighting intellectually. He thought, "I don't know who created this plan, but it's time to dismantle it. I'd have just killed the noble and left. But now, I will make this plan backfire splendidly on Tsunagakure. But I need to be careful. I have to prepare an escape route in case Suna sends reinforcements. Thoughts ran rapidly through Fujin's brain as he calculated a devious scheme. Chapter 270, A Drama. Fujin's clones entered the basement and killed the last two Suna ninjas in the city. The people who were disguising themselves as Toshio's family were horrified. They immediately began screaming and begged, "Please let us live. I promise we won't tell anyone what happened here." Despite the fear, they didn't expose that they weren't related to Toshio. They knew that if they did, their families would suffer for generations and Toshio would kill them even if the assassin didn't. Fujin's clones ignored their screams. One clone weaved a few hand seals. Bafura no Akaire Jutsu. Terror could be seen on their faces. However, nothing happened. The look of terror faded away and instead, they became confused. Some wondered, did his jutsu fail? Suddenly, they got a weird feeling. They felt a slight squirming in their stomach. In an instant, that squirming turned into a sharp pain. They felt as if their stomach was infested by hundreds of maggots. The maggots began eating their way from inside their bodies. The sharp pain soon turned into agony as they felt every mouth ripping and eating the skin, tissue, and tendons. Everyone held their stomach while screaming in pain and horror as the two clones watched. One person couldn't take it anymore and yelled at the top of his lungs. The people around him looked at him. Their eyes widened in horror as his stomach was torn open and hundreds of maggots spilled out and began writhing on the ground. Soon, they too faced similar fates. Fujin's clones watched as every one of them fell unconscious. However, there were no maggots on the ground, no blood, and no torn stomachs. The attack was just a genjutsu. Bafura no Akaire Jutsu was one of the genjutsus Fujin learned during his time in the Umbu. It was a very disgusting jutsu. However, against a ninja, its usage was limited. Any experienced ninja would know that they are in a genjutsu and disrupt their chakra. So its main usage was to disturb the enemy by causing a weird feeling and pain in their stomachs and use that disruption to attack them. Of course, there was one exception. This genjutsu was disgustingly effective when used by the Abarame clan ninjas. Fujin's clone thought, now they won't wake up for a while. Though I could have used a different genjutsu, this one ensures that they won't wake up for at least half a day. In addition, the horror they experienced will force their brains to forget about this event and the events before they went unconscious. This will make it very difficult for Suna to get the exact information from them. Fujin could have just killed them. But he had killed too many innocent people during this mission. If he could avoid killing more, he would take that option. The clones transformed into the two Suna ninjas they killed, stored their bodies and returned to Fujin. Fujin had finished completing his plan. 16 shadow clones popped around him. However, one immediately dispersed. The plan immediately was transmitted to all the remaining shadow clones. The 15 new clones immediately transformed into random people Fujin came across and flickered out. 8 clones rushed out of the city. They spread away at equal distances and formed a perimeter. All of them activated their chakra fields simultaneously, monitoring the city from all sides. If reinforcements from Suna arrive, they would send a message back to Fujin, who would withdraw immediately. The remaining 7 clones mixed with the common people in the city. Inside the mansion, Fujin and his clones, disguised as Suna ninjas, left the room. The servants in the mansion were all hiding in fear after the sounds of the fighting spread throughout the mansion. Though the sounds had stopped, they weren't sure who won. Seeing the Suna ninjas walk around the mansion relieved them. Fujin's clones looked at them and said, "The assassin is killed. You can relax." The servants all smiled. One said loudly, "I knew that any assassin couldn't kill Tsunagaku or ninjas. We are the strongest ninja village." Fujin's clone chuckled and asked, "Is that so? Then why were you hiding?" The servant immediately became nervous. He thought, "Shit, I was just trying to get in their good books. Why is he making it difficult for me?" The servants around him also stared at him. They were quite sick of his bootlicking ability. The servant said while stuttering, I was." Fujin's clone chuckled again and said, "It's fine. I have a job for you guys. Leave the mansion and spread the message. The assassin who kept killing the nobles is dead. There will be a huge announcement made. So everyone, who can, should arrive around the mansion." The servant immediately said, "I will immediately inform everybody." The others also nodded. Fujin's clone added, "If you find others hiding, inform them as well." They agreed and left. Fujin's clones found the others who were hiding and gave them the same job. Meanwhile, Fujin began going through items in the mansion. After searching for a bit, he found a photo album. Looking at he muttered, "So this is how this noble called Toshio looks. And this is his family. Though, trying to look for him actively will be pointless as he should be wearing a disguise to hide from civilians." Fujin created another shadow clone and dispelled it. The memories transferred to all his clones. The 7 clones that had mixed among the civilians began to keep an eye out in case they saw someone who looked familiar. The news spread through the city quickly. The news that an assassin was killing the nobles was already well known. To know that the assassin was killed in their city was a matter of joy and pride. Within minutes, thousands of people crowded around the mansion. Fujin watched it and wondered, will this be sufficient to make the noble crawl out of his hiding spot? Fujin and his clones scanned the crowd for 2 minutes. Unfortunately, they couldn't spot him. Fujin, who had transformed into Kazuo, stepped forward. He said in a loud voice, "Quiet down." Kazuo was well known in the city. The crowd went silent. Fujin continued saying, "An hour ago, Toshio-sama was attacked by that scum assassin. Unfortunately, he encountered me." The crowd listened in anticipation as Fujin looked at them. He shouted, "I killed that coward." The crowd instantly erupted in joy. The entire mansion was drowned in roars. The cheers were heard throughout the city. The ones who couldn't make it regretted not being there. However, they were cheerful as well. Fujin waited for the noise to lower and said loudly, "Tonight, the entire city will celebrate. So come to the mansion in the evening. We will have the largest buffet ever. When the fireworks go off, drop everything you are doing and come here to celebrate." The crowd cheered even louder. "Long live Toshio-sama. Kazuo-sama is mighty." Such slogans were shouted continuously. Fujin looked around with a smile on his face and slowly retreated into the mansion. The crowd lingered for a while before leaving. The news of a buffet spread through the city. Everyone was happy, except one person. Toshio was sitting in a restaurant. A lot of makeup was applied to his face. The people in the restaurant couldn't recognize him. A frown formed on his face as he cursed, "Why is Kazuo spending my money?" His face became ugly at the thought of his money being wasted on commoners. He wondered, should I return to the mansion? That bastard has already killed the assassin. So why didn't he call me back? He thought for a bit and decided, no. I have cooperated with Kazuo for a long time. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now. As for the money, I can earn it back in no time. He got up and began leaving the restaurant. As soon as he did, he heard two people speaking. One guy said, "Hey, did you hear? Toshio-sama hid in the city while a decoy took his place." I didn't expect Toshio-sama to be so cowardly. His friend replied, "Yes. I was very disappointed. I had higher expectations from Toshio-sama." The first guy said, "Yeah, everyone is disappointed. I heard that Lord Daimyo is upset with Toshio-sama. And a new noble would be elected." His friend nodded and said, "Yes. I hope Kazuo-sama becomes our new noble. Under him, we might become the strongest city in the West." The first guy chuckled and said, "I say the decoy should become the new noble. After all, he has the guts and the will to sacrifice himself for us. That's how a noble should be." The two continued talking while moving away. Toshio's face became very ugly. He almost lashed out at the two but controlled himself. He thought in rage, "I should have known. That bastard tricked me. He is using this opportunity to usurp my power."